Welcome to the podcast, Restore Yourself, Restore Your Marriage, where it's all about discovering the thoughts that get you in the mood, the thoughts that get you out of the mood, and how creating a deeper connection with yourself creates a deeper connection with your spouse. I'm your coach, Shelly Anderson, coaching you through life, love, and intimacy.
This is episode number 89. Self-respect is spouse respect.
I wanted to call it respect the booty.
You did mention that.
So you win. Okay. So what is it again?
Self-respect is spouse respect.
Awesome. Welcome, everybody.
Welcome.
And hey, just a quick request. If you're listening to this on Apple or Spotify, awesome. Thank you so much for listening. And for those listening on YouTube, thank you. Please, if you're listening to this on YouTube and watching this, please subscribe to our channel, Anderson Coaching. And if you're on Spotify or Apple listening to this, that'd be awesome if you guys could get on YouTube, find us, and subscribe and like it, because that's how we get to more people. And our whole goal is to try to help as many people as we can. So that would be amazing if you could do that. But if not, thank you for being here. We really appreciate it.
Nice. So we're going to talk about respect.
RESPECT.
That's right. I almost titled it that. So I was thinking a lot about a couple that I worked with probably 2 years ago who had some financial challenges.
Like us all.
Yeah. And so something that just kept coming to my mind was this concept of respect, because as they were going through their own financial challenges, the husband seemed to demand more and more respect from other people. Like all of a sudden, this became a huge deal for him. And
Respect about money?
No, just respect for himself.
He needed respect.
He needed respect.
I need a little respect, huh?
He needed a little respect.
Okay.
And whereas maybe 6 months or a year prior to that, this didn't seem to be such a important topic. But all of a sudden, this concept of respect was kind of roaring its head. And because he felt like he wasn't getting it from other people, he started demanding it. And the more he demanded respect, the less respect he was receiving.
That usually is the case, right?
Very much so. And so it really has been just kind of ringing in my ears, their story, because I think it can be such an easy trap to fall into. And if we don't have the discussion, we might find ourselves in this trap and think it's just, hey, there's nothing wrong with wanting respect. Like it's a good thing to have respect for yourself and respect for others. That's a great concept. It's a great value. But we may find that our tactics that we turn to, if we feel we aren't receiving the respect that we want or feel that we earned, we might just turn to other things that actually leave us with less respect.
So you're saying, maybe this is part of what you're saying, if we respect others first, maybe we'll get more respect. But if we demand respect first before we respect others, it seems like that might be a problem.
It is a problem. It is a problem. And sometimes I think we just don't realize that we're doing that. And I think for people who find themselves stuck here, they usually do feel stuck. They almost feel like at a point of desperation, like almost like it's the last straw that they're hanging on to, when it really isn't. But that's the place that they have found themselves in. They've kind of created this mind drama because they usually have lost some respect for themselves. And so they grasp even harder to other people giving them that respect.
That's so interesting, because a lot of times people who are a certain way and blame other people for being a certain way, it's usually because they have a challenge with that thing.
Yes.
And I won't even use any examples, because I think there's some really obvious ones that people know, and everyone's going to think about it a little bit differently. But if I am blaming someone for being a certain way and I'm pointing my finger, right? What's the saying? If you point your finger, there's 3 fingers pointing back at you. I think that's very true.
Yeah.
When we're blaming, usually our hands are not clean.
Yeah. So we're going to dive into this topic.
Okay.
And I think this also definitely shows up in marriage. And sometimes we may think that our spouse does not have respect for us if they didn't do what we wanted them to do.
Like the fact that when I went upstairs to go grab my phone, all the lights were on in the house. And I had just turned them all off. You walk down, I go up, all the lights are on.
Not all of them.
What the hell? All the lights are on.
Not all of them.
Okay.
Some. Okay, so I wanted to start off at least by defining respect. We all know what respect is. We all use this word. It's very common. But again, sometimes when we just take the time, and the podcast is a great opportunity to do this, is to really dive into the word and to look at some of its meanings so that we can expand our thinking about it and try to apply this word and approach the concept of respect in a deeper way.
I love when you do definitions because I assume I know what certain words mean.
Yeah.
But when you go over a definition, there might be one of the definitions or one part that I'm like, oh yeah, that's what it means. But then you give me a couple of other definitions and it gives me perspective
Yes.
on what that word actually can mean in my life and how I can actually use it
Yes.
to be better or to be better to you or others.
Yeah. And I do this with words too, right? Like when I was thinking about, hey, let's do respect, I kind of wondered, should we dive into the definition? And then I thought, of course we should, because we all know what it means. We're all going to assume we know the definition, but then maybe we'll find that little extra piece that helps us.
All right, get on with it.
Okay. Respect. It is a feeling of deep admiration for someone elicited by their abilities, qualities, or achievements. It's a relation to or a concern with something specific. It's due regard for the feelings, wishes, rights, or traditions of other people. It's a considered evaluation, and it comes from the Latin roots, meaning to look back. So I thought that was a very interesting one because I think when we think about the concept of respect, some of the definitions I've read are ones that we've probably considered, right? Like, oh, they've accomplished these amazing things. We will give them respect. But this one, a considered evaluation and the Latin roots of looking back, there's actually a very interesting thought process that's taking place where we're not just like pointing out all the accomplishments, but we're evaluating like what's really going on with this person. That means we've put thought into it. It's also an act of giving particular attention, meaning consideration and thoughtfulness. So again, I really like this because it's taking it a step deeper and not just that checklist of accomplishments.
I think we find this in the way we see celebrities or politicians that might say something we like, and we kind of cling on to certain values that they might have, or anybody that has something good about them, but we fail to look at the whole. And we might say, oh, I really like this person, but we might not really, they might not deserve our respect.
Yeah.
Just because they are really good at playing basketball or we really like their music. Like we can respect them for those things. But if we say, oh, I really like this person in general, and we fail to look at the whole, we just need to keep it in perspective.
Yes. So I really liked in these definitions of respect that there is something a little bit deeper that can be a part of when we decide we want to show respect towards someone else. So I was thinking about just different scenarios of respect, right? And this is probably going to show up in relationships that we have with people. And so this could be respect, obviously, between spouses and marriage. It could be at work. It could be out in the community. There's many places where the concept of respect can show up. But I also thought sometimes we may have respect for someone, but it's more out of fear. Like, well, I better just do what they're saying because I'm afraid of the consequences.
Right.
And I really don't know that if that actually fits the definition of respect. right? Because we may do something out of fear because maybe we don't want to lose our job or something, but is that actually showing respect? Is that an actual true definition of us respecting our boss or respecting someone else? I almost think that that's just more of an emotion of fear rather than respect.
Yeah, I think that's probably an incorrect way to use the word respect.
Yeah.
Like if you have a boss that you really look up to because you like the way she leads or something like that, then that's great. You can respect them for being a great leader.
Yeah.
But just respecting out of fear, that's a different definition. And we could run through different words, but like that's not respect.
Right. And I think sometimes maybe if we find ourselves caught in that, I think this is a good opportunity to just kind of reflect on that and say, is this really respect, or am I trying to act a certain way more based out of fear? Because I think when we take actions that are fear-based, or maybe just try to comply or be, or avoid conflict, I don't know if that's always out of respect. And sometimes if we do that, it's like we're maybe putting on the image that we're respecting somebody, but it's almost like with some underlying resentment and anger underneath. And that is not real respect.
No, not at all.
So I think it's really good in marriage to be able to kind of take a step back and be able to pull these definitions back out and say, what are the good things I want to pay attention to in this relationship?
Can I just say one thing about that? If you don't really respect them, and if you're acting a certain way out of fear because you want to get something out of that person, that's manipulation.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point.
I mean, even though they might have authority over you in your workplace, right, you're trying to get something out of them. And I mean, that really is something that's more shallow from your point of view as well. If that's what you're doing, that's not respect.
Right.
And someone might disagree, but I don't think that is. So as we apply this to marriage and personal relationships, we may compare how we feel towards our spouse with, somebody who's not our spouse. When we, as we, kind of compare the way that we use this word respect, so that we don't do it in a manipulative way.
Yes. And you brought up a good point that I hadn't thought of until just now, is let's say things are not going well, like between you and your spouse. Let's say you guys are having an off week and you get into this mindset of like, oh, they just don't respect me.
It happens.
Yeah, right? It does. How much easier is it going to be looking outside and looking for someone who does respect you, right?
Yeah, of course. That's a lot of times I've gone to work, thinking, having a hard week with you and going to work. I'm like, oh, look, I'm respected at work.
Yeah.
Where it might even be respect. People might be nice to me because they want to get something out of me.
Right.
Right. But in my mind, I'm like, oh yeah, people are doing what I ask them to do. Like I'll turn the lights off. But you don't even turn the lights off. It's so silly the way that we do that. We go and search for people who will make us feel a certain way because we desire, and we might even fear not feeling that way. So we look for it. We search for it. We look for meaning in the wrong places.
Yes. So this brings up a really important concept that we teach in life coaching. Usually when we start working with a client, this is kind of one of the first concepts we talk about. And it's a concept called emotional childhood. And it's when we're not feeling good about ourselves or just about anything. When we're not feeling good, we put the weight of that on someone else to solve. And this happens in marriage all the time. It's just our marriages are probably filled with instances where this has shown up. But I think this is definitely one of them. When we want to feel respected by our spouse and we want to try to demand it of them, we fall into the trap of emotional childhood. And what that means is instead of looking within yourself to say, hey, if I am not feeling respected by others, that's for me to work on. Mm. There must be something that I'm doing that is really pushing people away. And so it's an opportunity when we don't feel respected, to look inward.
Now, that's not a childish thing to do.
That is a mature thing to do.
So that sounds like you're starting to leave that land of emotional childhood, and you're going into the land of emotional adulthood when you start thinking that way. So that's a big step.
It's a huge step.
Because I've kind of liked being in the childhood lane.
What?
Right? It's hard to get out of that. It's hard to take a look at yourself and to really ask yourself that question, which is, in general, like, how am I causing a problem here?
Yeah, it's so true. And so when we fall into this trap of emotional childhood, we don't want to take the responsibility. And so if we are feeling, hey, I'm not being respected, one of the things we're going to want to do when we're really functioning from that kind of lower thinking, then we're going to say, hey, I want you to fix that for me. So you give me respect. I'm going to demand it of you.
Right.
And it's a controlling tactic and
a blaming tactic.
And those are two of the biggest hallmarks of living in the land of emotional childhood.
But no one does that. None of you do that. You guys wouldn't do that.
We never do that.
No.
Not us mature adults.
No way.
But no, our brain does this, and it's so much easier to say, hey, I am worthy of respect and I'm going to demand it of you, and you're not giving it to me. That is the easy route. And so humans are going to take that route naturally, unless we know different, unless we know better and say, hey, that's not the way to go about this.
Well, if we don't do that, then we are living in a world of victimhood.
Yes.
Right? We're a victim and everybody else is causing me to feel this way. And so now everybody's my enemy until they do what I want them to do. And really, this is kind of where tyrants are born. Yeah. Right? When you start to demand people do a certain thing for you. And if they don't, then, they're going to get it. Right. And, I spent a lot of time in the legal world and also the healthcare world. And I've been involved in a lot of, litigation. And most of the time, and now there's always times when people need to be compensated because they're treated wrong or they're neglected or harm caused. But most of the time, it really comes down to using this weapon of victimhood. Yeah. And even if they did deserve something, they always ask for more. It's, that's lawyers pushing them and all that. But this is kind of the way our legal system is driven in a lot of ways. Yeah. Now, it's there to protect people from harm. And people who are harmed should be compensated and protected, and it should never happen again. And whoever caused that harm there should be consequences. But when people are looking for every opportunity they can to blame somebody and to try to get something out of them and force that's not a good place to be. And I think that's really where our world is in a lot of ways, and not just in the legal system, but it's easy to blame somebody if you don't get a job or you don't get admitted to a certain university or whatever it is, right?
Right.
We want to blame somebody, and it's very rarely is it, what could I do better to have this result that I want? Yes. Now that's the magic question. How can I improve? And if I can improve myself, then I will be more valuable and people will start to give me respect. But it's not about thinking about the respect. It's thinking about, how can I be more helpful? Right. How can I be more valuable? How can I bring more to the table? Right. When we start thinking about that in life and in marriage, in parenthood, whatever it is, amazing things start to happen.
It's so true. It seems like, too, that often when we start demanding respect of others, we don't feel good about ourselves for whatever the reason is. I think about this couple, and they had made some bad money decisions, and they weren't happy about it. And I think they felt embarrassed by it. A few people knew. And instead of just trying to say, hey, we haven't been so smart with our money, let's get on a budget, let's try and fix things, let's improve our skills in how we use our money, all they did was kind of, again, put themselves in the victim mode, like you're saying, and then demand everyone respect them. But it just doesn't work that way. So I think that a lot of times when this demand for respect comes out, it's like we don't feel good about ourselves. And we're desperately trying to get back to that place. But when we do what you're saying and take care of these things and take on that responsibility ourselves, we are going to feel good about ourselves. So we're not going to be demanding respect from others.
You know, it is actually sad when people get to this place where they feel like they need to demand respect and they start taking credit where credit isn't deserved. You know, when they put themselves up on a pedestal when they didn't really earn that pedestal because they want to be popular or famous or wealthy or whatever it is. All these things that our world's telling us we should be or we're not going to be as valuable.
Right.
Well, that's pretty, it's this delusion that we start to live in, because when you start having to justify your life to live with yourself for things that you did not accomplish, and then you end up blaming others and demanding respect and all this, you are living in a world that is not real at all. You're living in a world that is not going to be kind to you. And so you're just digging yourself deeper and deeper until you realize, I need to make some changes here, and humble yourself. I mean, we know somebody that really has done this a lot lately, and you know they put themselves up on this, you know, pedestal of the alpha. You know, they automatically just assume that everyone should treat them as the best.
Right.
For no reason, though.
Right.
They haven't earned it. And look, I am all for treating people as valuable members of society and as family or friends or whatever. But when people start to, you know, when that pride starts to sink in and they start to use it to manipulate other people or to demand that, it is so annoying. Honestly, it really is asinine.
Yes.
And I feel bad for people who do this.
Yes.
You know, these are the one-uppers in the world, right? These are the people that always want to be the best. They always want to be the smartest in the room. And they don't acknowledge that everybody can contribute. Everybody has something that even they don't. You can't be a one-upper in everything.
Right.
And when we realize that all of us, including your spouse, have something that's valuable, even though we've been married to them for, 20 years, and we've seen it all. You can't live that way and be happy, or as happy as you could.
Right. So one thing I found really interesting this last week is we were preparing for this podcast. I wanted to see kind of what was out there in the world on this topic, right? Like, what's everyone being told about respect? What do the latest articles say about this and how to gain it, or why people don't have it? And some just seem to be very out in left field, but then there were certain concepts that kept coming up in every single one. And I remember reading one that was like, here are 200 ways to earn respect. And I was like, 200, good lands. But there were definitely some concepts that overlapped. But one thing, before we get into some of those, that I thought was very interesting, and I thought it was such a good point, and it really connects to everything that we're talking about. It said the biggest obstacle to someone earning respect is pride. Is not being able to say, you know what, maybe I messed up on that, or maybe I got it wrong, or maybe there's more to discover here.
Yeah.
It's thinking that you've got it all together, that there's no room for you to ever be incorrect, or that there's no value to be contributed by other people. When you become that self-centered, that is the biggest obstacle to you actually earning respect from others, because people don't want to listen to that.
It's like a player on a sports team that's a superstar, and every professional team, this is one of the things that it requires a bit of humility, right? You see a lot of arrogance, like on the basketball court, but if you aren't passing the ball, if you're not playing with the team, you're never going to win. It doesn't matter how good you are. There's no team that has one player that can win games.
Yeah.
Right? It just doesn't work. And in the family, right? there's been plenty of families where, maybe the father is the patriarch and they make all the decisions. Well, that might work to a degree, and, at different times in history that maybe that worked well. But in general, I don't, first of all, I don't want that responsibility. Second of all, I know that I'm not smart enough to be able to make all the decisions. And third, and these aren't in order by, aren't required to be in this order. But third, I know that you're better than me at a lot of things, and your input's going to be way better than what I would come up with on my own. And so there is no way that we can do anything alone. And when you start getting into the spirituality side of this, and, you start tying in, religious beliefs and all that, we know that I didn't create oxygen. I didn't create soil to feed myself. Like, who do I think I am? I need others, and I need, the lights that are in this room, right? Like, 100 years ago, it would have taken, probably like 200 hours of work just to have enough fire and kindling and, wood to burn enough light here that we just turn on with a flip of a switch.
Yeah.
So there's no way that we can do anything on our own. And there are people who think that they just deserve it all.
Right.
And then they deserve to tell other people what to do.
Right.
And I don't care if you're successful right now. At some point, you will fail.
Well, and I think also if that's like one of the biggest obstacles is just kind of being self-centered and prideful, then we've got to flip things around.
Yeah.
We have to be other focused. And that doesn't mean neglect ourselves, right? We have to start with being able to respect ourselves. But we also have to be open and to the contributions of other people. So I think in marriage, this is especially important. I remember when we were struggling with one of our sons, and I think you were out of town, and we were on the phone, and I was just telling you, like, this is what happened.
I remember this night.
Do you remember? And I was like, this is what I think we should do. And I was kind of giving you, like, my take on it. And I remember straight out you saying, you're wrong. And I was like, what? That was so hard for me to hear. Usually you don't ever just come out and say, like, you're wrong on this. And I remember having an inner dialogue with myself, because that's not easy to hear.
Right.
And I remember thinking, am I going to just be so convinced of my plan and my way and my solution that I'm not going to listen to what you say with openness? And even though I did feel like my pride was hurt in that moment, I said, it's better for me to listen to what you have to say and your ideas for the solution, because you think about things so differently than I do. And for our son, it's in his best interest to have more ideas, more solutions to talk about and discuss, rather than saying, here's the one that we're going to go with.
Right.
That was such an very interesting but eye-opening experience for me, to make sure that I try to keep myself in check also, and be in this place where I'm always open to your ideas and thinking about them and entertaining those ideas in my mind and seeing what they can bring to the situation.
Was I right that you were wrong?
You were right that I was wrong.
Okay.
100%.
So you remember, I don't remember exactly what it was, but because we could evaluate this later, and you're like, well, I went through this process where I had to humble myself, but it turns out that I was right anyway.
I'm sure it happens both ways, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure that there are times where maybe that answer would not have been right. But in this particular situation, what you were saying was totally correct. And it helped the outcomes tremendously when we made a bunch of changes the next day.
And, having respect for you also requires that I tell you what I think.
Yeah.
There's a part of that too. If my attitude was, you're wrong just because I want to be right, that's not the right way to approach it. But if I really think that you're approaching something wrong and I respect you, I'm going to tell you.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you what my honest thoughts are about something. And then, if we all do that all the time, we're going to grow a lot faster together. Even though that's harder, it's a lot easier just to say, okay.
Right.
Yes, honey, whatever you say. And I do that a lot because sometimes, unless something's really important, there's no reason to like always think about everything. Like if something's more important to you in general, let's go with what you think. If it's less important to me, why would I fight you unless I really thought it was going to ruin our family
Right.
or our children or something? But I think that's a good rule of thumb. If it's more important to the other spouse, then roll with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
If it's important, equally important to both of you, then you can discuss it more. But if I don't care that much about something, why would I fight you on it?
Right.
Even if I thought maybe you were wrong. So you have to use your judgment on that. But respecting each other means that you're honest about the things that you think are important.
Yeah. Very true. And I think that if we're able to stay in the mindset of being open to our spouse and open to their ideas and, how they view things, how they think about things, that is going to be a step in the right direction to being able to build respect.
Yeah.
We're going to have respect for ourselves because we're going through that process, and we know that that's not always easy, nor is it always the human nature's first response, right? And we want to be right. But if we know that we are being open and saying, well, maybe I could be wrong on this, maybe there is a better way, we know that we're working and using skills so we can have that respect for ourselves, and then we can have respect for our spouse too as they try to contribute in a positive way.
So I might be jumping ahead here, but there's a really good quote from Heraclitus from from 400 or 500 BC. Okay, I want to read this.
I don't even know who that is.
Well, he was an old philosopher, one of the ancients that had some really good things to say.
Okay.
And this is deep, okay?
Okay.
Because one of the things we have to respect also is the growth in each other.
Yeah, I love
We're
that.
always changing. And he said, no man ever steps in the same river twice, for it is not the same river, and he is not the same man.
I love that.
And I think it's so true. We aren't the same. And I think sometimes respecting somebody, or not sometimes, it really is always, respecting somebody means that you're respecting the journey that they're on as well.
Yeah.
And in marriage, I think, I've fallen victim to this, false way of thinking is, thinking of you as the same as you have been over the last 20 years. But you've changed so much, and you've learned so much, and you've experienced so much over that time. And if I'm not respecting that, every time we have a conversation about something, I'm going to make assumptions about you. You do this. We all do, right?
What?
We make
Humans do
we make
this?
these assumptions like, when you see somebody that you haven't seen in a while, you kind of think of them in the same way that, like, you take a snapshot of them like 5 years ago. They're not the same person.
No.
They're really not. And so things are never the same. Moment to moment to moment, they're never the same. You're on a growth journey in life, and that's the beauty of life too. And we need to also respect the nature of our situation in this state of mortality and imperfection, and this place where we're all learning together. And so I think that's part of respect too, and realizing that no matter, even if the situation seems the same, it's not the same river.
Right.
Because that water is moving, and the ground underneath it is always moving. It's not the same. It might even seem like it's in the same place, but it's actually probably moved a little bit since you were in that river.
Yeah.
And the person stepping in it is not the same. So I love that because it reminds me of the beauty of our mistakes and the beauty of our imperfection. And it really is a sacred thing.
Yeah.
And marriage is the perfect culmination of that. When two people who are both changing all the time are trying to constantly learn about who that person is today versus yesterday. And we don't think about this all the time.
No.
But when you acknowledge it, it does make things different when we're showing respect to somebody. That's why you always do this, or you always do that, or you never, right? Those are terrible things to say, first of all, because they're not true, usually.
Yeah.
But even if that was the case, we still have the ability to change
That's true.
because we're learning.
That's true.
So I wanted to throw that in there because I think that really is part of respecting somebody, is that they're changing, and not in such a drastic way that they are a totally different person. I don't know you. Well, this too shall pass, because we are going to change.
Yeah.
And the environment is going to change. And thank goodness that we get to go through this, because that's what makes it really special.
That's right. So from the articles that I was researching and reading throughout this week, there were a few tips that I really thought were good. And these were the ones that kind of seemed to be repeated over and over and over. And I thought they would be worth mentioning. The one that I think I liked the most said this: improve the environment for the betterment of all. And I loved that, because you just take whatever moment you're in, right? It doesn't mean change like the decoration on the wall, but look at the environment, look at that moment, be present. And if your pride is getting in the way and you're not listening and not being open to the ideas of others, then you're falling back into this trap. But if you're alive to everyone's contribution and you have a desire to improve those moments for everyone's benefit, you're in a really good place.
Yeah.
And I think other people who experience you being that way, they are going to feel respect for you, because they are going to feel heard and understood and considered. They are also going to think that you're a thoughtful person. If you're listening to other people and thinking about it and reflecting and participating in the conversation, they are going to feel that you are very thoughtful and that you are approaching whatever their situation is with a lot of consideration, and not just like, I don't want to deal with this, right?
Well, you're describing someone who's a great facilitator.
Yeah.
You know, when I think about someone giving a talk or teaching a lesson in church or even in class or whatever, the best teachers are those that, back to another ancient, like the Socratic method in teaching is asking questions.
Yeah.
And you just keep asking questions and let those that are there bring the substance based on those questions. You can lead a discussion just through asking questions.
Right.
And that's such an incredible way to learn, because then everyone's thinking, everyone's participating. And instead of just being like, oh, you just are the one that's talking. Now, I do this sometimes, right? I think we all do. We just have a lot to say and we might talk a lot. But if you take a step back and do what you're saying and create an environment where everybody's learning together, that is divine.
Yeah.
It really is. It's another level of learning and just experiencing one another. And now everybody has a part to play.
Yeah.
And therefore, the conversation or the experience is going to go much farther than it would otherwise.
Yeah. And I think when people are more invested in those conversations and feel like they're being listened to, they're more inclined to actually really be a part of whatever it is that you guys discussed, whether it's a solution to a problem or, how to approach finances. They're going to be really more committed to that.
Yeah.
Because they felt included. They felt respected themselves. And so
You have ownership.
yes. So it's a really good place to be. Some final points. I think every article talked about listening. And it's going to be really hard to respect other people if you never listen to them. So they all talked, this is one of the first, probably on the top of all the lists, was you have to be a good listener. You have to be actively engaged in the process of listening and mindful, present, and not just listening to look like you're listening, but actually listening.
Or just thinking about what you're going to say next.
Right, your rebuttal. And then the other thing that they said in most of these articles was find respect for yourself first. If there are things that you in your life were like, okay, these are the things that are important to me. These are my morals or my values. But I've kind of dropped the ball on this one. right? We're starting to live an incongruent life, and we're not going to feel good about ourselves when we're doing that. And so it gives us an opportunity to realign, to say, you know what, I've kind of been not doing so well on finances. This was a big priority to me growing up. I've always wanted to be good with my finances, and now I've let the ball slip. We can realign.
So you're saying to 50% of the people listening to this, statistically,
Yeah.
if you don't want to get divorced, change yourself.
Yes. So it's really back to this main theme of if you are struggling, I'm going to just keep going with this finance example. Don't expect your spouse to do all the fixing. Right? Look within yourself and say, okay, what am I doing? Am I staying on budget? Have I let things go? Have I just, run up the credit card? Have I made some bad, financial decisions? Well, if you have, it's time to realign. And as you do and put in the work to get that realignment, you are going to have that self-respect. So you won't be demanding it from others. Yeah. You will feel it. When you have self-respect, you never demand it of others. There's no need to. And so those were kind of like some of the main points of all these articles that I read.
Can I say one more thing and then you can close up? But there are a lot of people who haven't struggled with certain things. Let's just take finances. We live in a very blessed society. There's no doubt about it. Some people struggle more than others, but when it comes to finances, we mostly live above our means, right? We spend more money than we need to.
Yeah.
And, you may be fine and not struggling with finances. You don't worry about, paying your bills, and you don't live paycheck to paycheck. That's awesome. But what if you do someday? What if something happens? You lose your job, or the economy takes a huge dump, right? I mean, that's happening right now, actually, as we speak. We're going through economic, fear because of certain things happening in the world. There are things that could happen overnight that could cause this stress to happen. So if you aren't struggling financially, you should still prepare for the possibility of that happening.
Yeah.
And I look at us and I think that's something that we need to do better because, we've been pretty blessed, and, we've thought about finances a lot more recently than we have for a long time because I quit my job 2 years ago and we're starting a new business, and, we're trying to figure out what the next 20 years look like.
Yeah.
And that's scary. It really is. I mean, we're in that place where, we could go through a lot more hard times before things get better. And if we aren't working on this, then when that stress actually hits, if we're not prepared and we don't have the tools to be able to get through it together, then I'm at risk for wanting to find, places that will make me feel better.
Right.
Whatever that means, right? The escape. And that's one of the reasons why I think finances are one of the villains when it comes to marriage.
Yeah.
Is that there's a lot of pride when it comes to that, especially for us men. I think traditionally this is the reason why we're the ones that feel like we need to provide for our families. And when we can't, there's a lot of self-loathing that can happen.
Yeah.
And so we're going to look for relief from that somewhere else. And that could lead to affairs. It could lead to addiction. It could lead to all, gambling.
Yeah. Taking
bigger risks and getting deeper into the, there's all kinds of things that can happen. And in general, it can just drive you apart. Even if you don't go down those dark paths, there can be stress there. But there doesn't have to be. Again, the beauty of marriage is that you get to work through things together.
Yeah.
You do. You get to. Now, again, back to my cliche that I love and hate so much, it takes two to tango.
Oh, yeah. It does.
It does. And if one person is tangoing by themselves, it's certainly not as fun. But maybe you have to tango by yourself.
Sometimes you do.
Yeah.
And that's all right.
Until the other person sees that you're tangoing and they're missing out. They're going to want to, participate.
Right. Right. Well, I guess as we wrap things up, I would challenge you this next week to self-reflect and see if there's something that has gone off course and if there's a way to bring it back in alignment for yourself. And as you put in that effort to get those things realigned, your self-respect will go back up. And when it does, then you show up to all the environments that you show up in with your own self-respect. And so it's very easy to give respect to others in the room, making their environment and their experience that much better.
You can do it.
You can do it. So the more, how does it go?
Remember,
the more you restore that type of intimacy with yourself, the more you restore it with your spouse.
thank goodness.
Yes. Thank you so much for listening today. And we hope you will join us again next week.
Bye.